first 1976 Indian ways where you had a knife and you cut somebody's throat. So I did a lot of that, and they decided that I've done too much of it, and they pulled us off the air. But at least it was an opportunity for me, I suppose, to play a character that had some sort of action elements to it and whatnot. But this was really the first. This was the first real opportunity to play. What I loved about Snake was that this is very, very different for the time period. There were a lot of Eastwood movies, and there were a lot of Bronson movies and things where they played characters that wreaked havoc and whatnot. But they always started off with some sort of catastrophe that happened in their personal life that justified their behavior. Theoretically, their wife and baby were not only killed but burned. Had to be raped first. Whatever. It was so bad that the audience would say, "Go get him, Clint." We had a scene in this movie that we shot. It was the opening of the movie, and it was where Snake and his partner go steal. It was very cool, too. We shot in Atlanta, a subway that wasn't even open yet. Very futuristic kind of thing. We stole credit cards or something from the United States credit card place. Part of all credit cards, and Snake took about half of them. But his friend had a limp and was kind of messed up, and as they were running away, police and bells were clanging and whatnot, his friend gets shot, falls down, and Snake has a choice. He can either keep going and make it, or he can turn back and get his friend. He turns back and gets his friend and gets caught. And, it made perfect sense when you read the script. I thought, the audience has some, because of what this guy's going to be, the way I'm going to play him. He ain't going to have any social redeeming values to him. And then John cut that part out of the movie. And for the first time ever, really, I thought what was really fascinating about it was a guy walks on the screen and he walks off a bus and he's just, fuck you. Doesn't care about anybody or anything. And he's a bad boy. And it's never explained why or where it came from. And some of the secrets of Snake that John and I always held close to our vest, and we still do, are just things that I wanted to make a cool wardrobe. And we had done a photograph to help, I think, garner money for it, all 7 million of it. And yeah, exactly. And so I had the tattoo on my arm, and I hadn't been working out at all yet, and I had green fatigues on and the combat boots, and I sort of looked at it and didn't like it, and I said, John, I really want to work on this. And so I started thinking about Snake's history in Siberia, and I said, well, if it's in Siberia in the wintertime, it'd be black and white. And so we made black and white skin-tight fatigues, instead of a cool-looking fatigue instead of what I thought was an army klutzy thing. And no combat boots. You put motorcycle boots on, and I put four golf cleats coming out of the toes. And he was a guy who lived in that time and lived that way. And then we put the tattoo where it should be. Huh. And if you're going to wear it over, wear it there. And so it was an opportunity to do stuff like that and create a character that really didn't have any social redeeming values.
Well, it sure works. What about the patch? Was that always there?
The eye patch was not, and I said to John, I think it would be cool to wear an eye patch. And I think a lot of other guys would have gone, well, I don't know. And John immediately went, that's great. I don't think anybody's worn an eye patch since John Wayne and True Grit. And the studio didn't like that idea. Wait a minute, my leading guy here is going to cover half his face with a no. And John said, it'll be great, it'll work. And we just had a great time on this. My brother-in-law, Larry Franco, you saw his name, he produced it. His son, Matt, was on the movie. My wife at the time, Susan Hughley, we just had a baby. I always liked, I remember one time, we were in the middle of St. Louis, there as it says at the end. This town, in 1980, when we shot it, was absolutely empty at night. I mean, we shot every night, and it was, the reason we shot it was because there was nothing there at nighttime. It was just completely empty. And we didn't have a lot of, we didn't have the ability to have a lot of, crowd control. And there was no need to because there was nobody there. But there were some, you know, some pretty rough boys in the neighborhood at night, bums and stuff. And so you always know there are those moments when you know a character's probably going to work. And one night I had to go down about 3 blocks, and we didn't have anybody to go down there with. You know, so I just went out and geared up with all my guns and everything. It was one of the things where snakes coming in to, you know, do wreak some havoc. And I came around the corner, and there's these 4 guys there. And we're around the corner now, and none of my guys can see me. And I just looked at these guys, and they looked at me. And this is how different this was at that time. When you saw that guy with a serious machine gun and a knife and, you know, a bunch of stuff you didn't know what it was even, and that gun, and I just flashed that light a little bit on the gun, and these guys looked at me, and they were pretty rough characters, and they went, "Hey man, easy." Away. And I couldn't wait to get down and tell John, I think this guy's going to work. But we were in this that kind of area to shoot. And it
looks like Beirut. I mean, it looks like a war zone.
Yeah, there was nothing there.
They had fires, right? It had torn through.
I don't remember, but it was just empty, and dregs of the earth were hanging around all that. And I was like, cool. We were willing.
And then one of the great things about this film is the depth of the cast. I mean, and just all these players and these great faces and these funny characters and moments. Maybe, you know, not to pick a favorite, but maybe pick something that's fresh on, comes to mind quickly. Some of the supporting cast that left a big impression on it.
Well, they all did, and like I said, you know, Adrienne was there. She's married to John at the time, so we were friendly. Susan and I were married. We just said, oh, that's what it was. That's where I was going to go with it. So it was that night. Every night I'd come home, and sometimes I didn't get out of my wardrobe because I was so tired. The day's been so long. And I'd just go home and have my wardrobe with me because I was going to use it the next day anyway. And I'd take the morning, Boston, our son, was just born, and he was a tiny baby, and I'd take the morning feeding. So there I was, I pulled the eye patch out. Looking like that, but there I was feeding our little baby. Kind of an incongruous look for Snake. You know? Yeah, we're actors. But Susan was great in the movie. I always, this was one of my favorite characters that she played, and I thought Adrienne was great. Harry Dean Stanton was spectacular. I used to call up Isaac in the morning to go work out. Because at night he would go, hey, tomorrow morning, give me a call and we'll work out together. So I'd ring, phone and ring. Finally I'd pick up. You want me to call you back in 5 minutes? No. Everybody in the movie I thought was Tommy Atkins. You know, John had his troupe, and then we were fortunate enough to get to do some other things together too.
Ernie Borgnine.
Ernie Borgnine was great.
That's what I remember shaking his hand.
Yeah.
Like a child.
He was one of the sweetest people ever. It was just, you know, it was one of those special things. We thought we were doing something that nobody else was doing. And many times John and I did movies that we felt that about, that we're doing something that's not being done.
Anybody like Big Trouble in Little China?
Because Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, this was successful. This movie did well. We were only in 700 theaters. It was a very small company, but it was well liked, and it was extremely well reviewed in some arenas. But The Thing, no, and The Big Trouble in China, no. And the studio didn't know what that was. I mean, and
doesn't seem to know what it is.
No, I won't mention any names, but at the studio screening, but I will say who it was. It was the head of the studio. Stood up at the end of the movie and didn't know that John and I were in the back. And John and I are and he stood up and he's got all the guys around. And he goes, "Well, I don't get it. I mean, first of all, the character that Kirk plays just isn't that good at what he does." John, got it. Got the guy. We kind of turned the lead and the traditional sidekick roles around in terms of the way they were played. But
all these years later, it is very nice to see that these movies have garnered, I think, the kind of attention that they've earned, that they deserve. And so when you make movies, you always hope that they do well. You hope that audiences see them. But when you make them and you look at each other as you're doing them and saying, that would be the choice that we could make that's going to make the audience happy now, or we can do it with a little more what belongs actually in the movie, which they might not see as clearly. I was just last week at the AFI talking about The Thing, and that movie was a great example of that. They just, yeah, it is awesome. They don't know, at the time, it was just like, oh, what is it? I mean, they think half of people couldn't watch. I mean, it was at that time, it was just a horrific looking thing. I couldn't get the story at all because it was too difficult to do. And I just love John for not backing off of it. And you know, if you're going to kiss a girl with a lot of lipstick in Big Trouble in Little China, you pull away, you got lipstick on you. And he thought that one over. He said, "I'll do it."
You know, you mentioned that when you first worked with John on with the Elvis project, that you sort of felt, oh, I like this. This is a good connection, stuff like that. He was here last night. He is a funny guy. He's a grumpy guy, and a lot of it's, I think, theater, but maybe not. I don't know. But what was it that you connected with? I mean, you had been growing up in the industry. Was it you brought the fresh air or something?
I just remember looking through the camera. John was always a, if you don't know him well, he can be an intimidating type of a guy. He's very smart. It's funny how you hit it off with certain people and you don't know why. And I can say that about John. I used to go sometimes over to his house and we'd watch basketball together. We'd watch a whole game and he might say, I don't know, 2, 3 words to each other, have a 6-pack of beer, and then I'll go, I'll see you later. And we had a good time. And he was also, but he was, I think, an extremely talented man. For my money, this is one of my favorite scores in a movie ever. John, and all John's movies are all John. I just think he's an extremely talented guy, and I liked him. I found him easy to be around, easy to collaborate with. He was always open to ideas. There was never any confusion. John was always the captain of the ship. You're doing his movie. His vision is what you're all trying to get up there on the screen. And anything I could do as an actor to make that better, I would try to bring to work that day. And anything that I thought was not, living up to what I thought John wanted, I would work hard to try to make it better. Just on a personal level, I just always loved John. He's like a big brother to me. He was like a big brother who I always felt comfortable around. I always felt protected with John. I always felt John was trying to do his best, and he would never let me down. I have a real strong love for John.
That's really nice.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy. He's different. I mean, I remember one day looking through the camera. I think it was on Escape. I looked through the camera, and I'd like to do that just to kind of get a feel for what movie I'm in. You can see what the guy's doing. And I'll never forget it. It was. I looked through the camera and I turned the camera and I said, "Is this the framing?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "What's wrong with him?" And he just looks at life looks different to him. He just does, his framing at the time was very, very different. A lot of guys have copied it now. It's become a way of shooting and did it quickly. But at the time, it was like, what's he thinking? Why does he see it that way? And it's what makes John's movies, I can watch it, 30 seconds of any movie. If it's John, I know it's John.
Yeah, the rhythm of it, the cadence of it.
And the framing.
Exactly.
It's just awesome.
And then, and it's amazing to see the influence of this film. I mean, you must, through the years, like, yeah, there's another one. Oh, yeah, look at that. And video games, I mean, the influence of it all. And, you guys went back. You did Escape from Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I really, there's a lot about Escape from LA that is I think, questionable, but I like that about it. What's funny about that movie is, that movie is, I think, and it has, again, like the other one, and like some of the other movies, it's taken a long time for people to understand the difference between the Big Apple and the Big Orange. That movie is representative of this place, and people completely. I remember reading one review where one reviewer said, "Oh my God, these guys don't know they've done a left-wing movie." And I totally think, evidently he doesn't know that Los Angeles is a bit of a left-wing town. And yet he didn't get it, because it's not a left-wing movie. It's a movie where a guy who was a right-winger predicted an earthquake, and everybody bought in and said, "Oh my God." A left type thinking, right type acting. And what we did was we took, and we talked about it a lot. And it's really a very simple movie. It's about a movie about, really at the end of the day, this guy just wants to have a cigarette. So I want you to all go to Santa Monica tonight and try to have a cigarette. I don't think it'll be real long before you can go on a date. I think that's why the movie is what it is at the end. That movie has a Los Angeles political scene that's part of the movie, and that's very different from a Manhattan that becomes a prison. And I thought it was interesting. I always like the scene where she looks at his hand and she says, "Your life is like in a loop." So that's why the movie is the way it is, and I think that it has a lot of things. I think watching. The other thing was last year we could make that movie because I was starting to age, and it was we did it 17 years later, and I said I can still do Snake, and we wanted to be able to have those movies played if you wanted to play them back to back, and Snake was he still looked and acted like Snake and wasn't wasn't looking like I'm looking now.
St. Louis, man. Come on, what are you talking about? Let's go.
There's a lot of rumor that they're going to do a remake of Escape from New York. I've always said nothing is sacred in our industry. If we did a remake of The Thing, why not? I think there's plenty of guys out there who could do an interesting version of Snake. I have always said this, though, and whenever they ask me about that, they ask me about who would Snake be, and then they tell me who they've thought of and who they've thought of. And it's always fascinating to me that the only people I ever hear about are always guys from England or Scotland or foreigners. They're not American. And when you see Escape from New York, there's one thing that I can tell you about Snake Plissken. He's an American. There's a reason that when he gets into the ring with a baseball bat with nails in it. That's American. It's not a hockey stick. It's not a curling stick. It's not, it's not set up. It is a baseball bat. And so I always felt that was an important thing because he was a war hero. He was an American war hero. And an American war hero, again, back in that time, the first time, American war hero, who I think Lee Van Cleef says, "I'm ready to kick your ass out of the world, war hero." Yeah.
In the scene with the ring, you were saying out there that that was...
Oh, not Alex Paper.
Yeah.
Well, I was a younger man then. We had, Dick Warlock was my double. We had Dick and I were working the fight out with Ox Baker, and Ox was a very nice man. Ox, that's his name, yeah. And the problem with Ox was that he was, this was way back in the day when wrestling was just guys that got into the ring and did the best they could, to really hurt each other. But they didn't really know how to, he didn't know how to pull a punch, he just didn't know how to do it. And we were having a hard time working it out because he just kept making a mistake and laying you out, and it just doesn't work because, well, it's painful and all that, but the thing is that you can't get it shot because he's going to hurt somebody, and he would. So we got it all worked out, and Dick's going to do the master shot, and we got it all worked out. And here comes Larry and he goes, you got to do the fight. I said, for the master? And he said, you got to do everything. I said, why? He said, go take a look at Dick. He hit Dick in the forehead with that baseball bat. He had a baseball on his forehead. And I said, all right. So get in there. And I told that guy, I said, make sure that trash can lid can take it. And it's really an old-fashioned fight when you look at it, because that's just him beating on it. And I've taken everything I got to just survive this thing. And I did, and I got through it. And it was the day before this thing we found out that, and this is something that, it sounds extremely dramatic and whatnot, but it was true. Ox had, in a fight, had killed his best friend. So he was doing his best. He really was. And his best wasn't very good in terms of backing off. And it was like, I guess, 2-3 days of this, and we were finally just escaping. And it came time now to kill Ox, to kill that character, I forget his name. And the way we had to do it was he had a block of wood glued to the back of his head with a nail coming out of it that I got to come down and hit just right, not too hard, but hard enough to sink the bat into the nail, so the bat will stay there. So now he's splayed out over that thing, and he doesn't like this. I said, yeah, it's my turn now. Now you know how to feel. I said, I'm not going to miss you. Don't worry about it. I'm pretty good with a baseball bat. And he had a hard time. He started to flinch, and I said, if you flinch, I'm not going to be able to get the nail. So he finally said, Doc, just lay it out there, and I'll get it. And just one time, he just put his arms on the thing, and I just came down real quick with it. And bing, it just stayed there, and I walked away, and the thing. So yeah, that was I'm glad I don't do that stuff anymore.
So he killed his best friend? I mean, that's
where I didn't want to go to. Yeah, he actually did. Yeah. He actually wasn't the only one.
Are you sure he's an actor?
No, he wasn't. He was a wrestling guy. He was a really sweet guy, a really nice guy. I never told that story because it's not. I'm sure it's not a good memory for him. How much of a memory going on there now? So that was anyway. It was indicative of the kind of work we were doing at the time.
You were talking about the way that you looked at John as almost like an older brother. Because you started so young, how old were you? You were like 11?
I was 9.
9. Yeah. And Walt Disney signed you to the contract. Was that possible, or is that?
Yeah, no. I've been working for about 4 years, I guess, and Mr. Disney went over there to meet him on this thing called Follow Me Boys. It was going to star Fred McMurray, and I'd already done a television series at the time, which I worked with about 13 shows with Charlie Bronson. He replaced a guy named Mike Whitney. And it was The Travels of Jamie McPheeters was on Sunday nights opposite Disney Wonderful World of Color. So anyway, I got this job and then ended up getting a contract there. It was funny because when I went there, we talked to a man named Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. That guy's great in that movie, isn't he? Why is that stuff so good? It's like, when it's good, it's really good. He's got that commercial out now, and he's good. That's right on. But Anderson was the sort of hatchet man from Mr. Disney. And went in there. I was a real serious ball player. I was working my way, from being a kid ball player to a teenager, and then, hopefully get to turn pro, which I did get to do. And I was very serious about it. And in this contract, we wanted to have me be able to get off on game days. We also had a fantastic baseball team. When I was 13, we had the best senior league baseball team in the United States. And I was the second baseman on that club, and I could not be there. So my dad was in, we were talking over, and they finally said, well, that's just not going to work. So I left, and we were walking out the door, and the guard said, hang on a second, we want you to go back to Mr. Anderson's office. And we always figured that Mr. Disney was listening. And he told him, he's not jerking around, guys. He's a baseball player. He's got to be there. So we're gonna have to work with that. And I ended up being there I was there for 10 years, I guess.
Yeah. And with great success. And as a youngster, to have an affinity and an aptitude and success in two different things like that, was there a natural tug between them? Did you feel yourself sort of going back and forth between them, or was it just, this is what I am, this is what I do, I do both?
Yeah, I was just going to do both for as long as I could, and I always thought that something would happen that would tell me which way I was going to eventually go if I had to make a choice. But I didn't think that I didn't have to, because I could work in the off season. Guys do it now. And then I got injured out of the game when I was 22 or 23 years old, and then I fell back on the other world that I'd always been in. And I actually, for the first time, began to look at it as something more than just a job or a paycheck, and something more than I'd always looked at it before. I started to say, Kurt, you gotta. It took me a while. It took me a couple of years before I said, you gotta try to make this thing matter to you. And interestingly enough, when I was about 20, I guess I was about 25 or 26, I started to get the bug for how much fun it was to create something and create characters. That was when I did consciously make a decision, though, that I was not going to play one character or myself all the time. I was going to just do as many different things as I could, because I knew that if I didn't do that, I would really get bored with it and wasn't having fun. So that was a conscious decision when I was about 25, and I knew it was going to cost me a lot of money. And it did cost me a lot of money. My great agent, Rick Messina, is actually here tonight, and Rick and I together have been responsible for what I happily recall a woman once saying to me. She said, "You know, your career is really strange." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" She said, "Well, it's like it was handled by a drunken driver." And I was always proud of Rick and I for that, because we intentionally swerved and went left when everybody wanted us to go right, and all the way through. And I got to play many, many different characters and have like I said, 52 years of a wonderful, might be more than that. It was great, just a great time in this business, really fun. And some of the most fun was being able to work with John and do this stuff.
And then, that age where you sort of had that kind of turning point, I mean, that's an age where you're discovering what the world really is, and the world that can be in these characters. I mean, you're becoming, like a man. What are some of the other people, famous or not, that might have had a real influence on you? Someone that you look to as like maybe a North Star figure?
A dangerous question with me, because it's an arrogant answer. I thought Brando was in a class by himself as an actor, and still do. Other than that, I appreciate, I'm like the greatest audience in a movie. I love all movies. I love bad movies. I love everything, watching it as an audience. But and I love working with, I like the people in the business. They're really nice and they're really fun. Actors are always amazing to me in terms of how they come up with stuff that they do. But I have to admit that as far as having someone that I looked at and said, I want to do that, I never even came close to having that. It just never occurred to me. Nobody ever struck me like, oh, wow, I want to be that guy.
Was there a ball player that was like that?
William McCovey was a ball player that I latched onto. I started watching him in the Pacific Coast League, and I admired him. He was everything I wasn't as a ball player, and I think that's probably why. I just loved him, and I actually got to meet him, and it was bittersweet, because I was going to go up to do the guys, nobody here, Tennessee Ernie Ford. Does anybody here even ever think, oh, a couple of 9-year-olds in there, that's right. Tennessee Ernie Ford had a show, and I was doing Travels in Theaters, and so he did his show in San Francisco. And they wanted me to do the Tennessee Ernie Ford show. Now, I have been averse to publicity my entire life. And one of the few actors in Hollywood that actually says that and has lived it. I just don't know why, but it was very hard. And it wasn't what I wanted to do. It was fun. The day on the set was fun. Making the show was fun. Making the movie, seeing the result, watching the audience have a good time with it. Great. And let's go do another one. And all the other stuff in between is just a horror show. So it's just the way it is. And no complaints. Money's great. So, so now I'm going to do the Tennessee Ernie Ford show. Apparently, I didn't want to do this and that. And they said, it's in San Francisco. And I looked at them and I said, you want me to tell them that you get to meet Willie McCovey? You'll do it? I said, yeah. And so I did the Tennessee Ernie Ford show, and I got to meet Willie McCovey because others had to. The only problem was that because of the timing of it, I had to wear the outfit that I wore in the show, which was just destroying my ego in my mind. There's Willie McCovey, and it's hi Billy, and I know what I look like. And you know, he was so sweet. He just saw this 12-year-old kid. He just saw this 12-year-old kid who loved him. I actually yelled out Willie and ran over to him, and Willie Mays happened to be standing right there, and I went right by him. And they took pictures of that. It was a big deal. And then and I have that picture still. My dad had that picture in his hallway because when I went with San Diego, Willie had been traded to San Diego. Now I was a 21 or 22-year-old guy playing ball, and my stall was next to Willie McCovey's stall in the spring training. So it was pretty great. You know.
And then you know, the voice of Snake Plissken.
Yeah, that's it's kind of a wives' tale. I guy the other night when we were doing the thing, he kind of misconstrued it too. Sorry. And man, get out of here. And I didn't know what. I really was working on that. I was down to that. I didn't know what to do because that was very critical to that character. And then one day John said, "Okay, guess what?" I said, "Well," he says, "Lee Van Cleef is going to play Houck." And I said, "That's great." He's like, he's one of my favorite types, and his voice is one of the best. And that made me think the voice, and I thought, well, he did pretty good with Eastwood. and I thought, yeah, not Eastwood, but this guy's version of that. He probably, the way Eastwood, kind of the way he sort of sounded, I liked. It wasn't an intentional rasp, but I didn't think, the truth was, I didn't think, like some of the roles that Eastwood had played, or Eastwood himself, I don't know, I didn't think Snake cared to raise his voice ever to be heard. He never, he just, if you don't hear me, that's fine. He didn't, you know, so he was always like that. So he did. I know what I'm going to do. So it's kind of like, you work these things out as an actor. That's what's fun, you know. If you're going to play Elvis, you don't have much of a choice. You gotta go find it. That was an interesting story, actually. I found it by finding out that he grew up in the same town, Tupelo, Mississippi, that Cassius Clay at the time, Muhammad Ali, was in the same area. And I had worked with Elvis when I was 10, I think, when I worked with him. And he was very, very, very memorable. And, I mean, he was. I was 10 years old. I didn't really, Elvis Presley, I'd heard the name. I didn't really know who he was. I didn't listen to his music. I wasn't old enough. Regis the Cruiser. I knew he was a big deal. The first time I ever saw a real celebrity, we pulled onto the set in Seattle at the World's Fair, and literally 5,000 girls just came out of nowhere and just like jumped on his car, and he couldn't even get to the set. He had to back off. And I literally said, what's that? And literally somebody said, "This Elvis." And I thought, whoa, yeah, I've heard about this guy. I guess he's really that popular. When you're 10 years old, that's legit. My world was other things. And he was just a really sweet, kind-hearted guy, and he sounded like that, and he was very memorable. But it was, in trying to learn it, and the rhythm of it, and the sound of it, it was better to listen for me to Muhammad Ali and understand the sort of region, and then I put the two together in my head and sort of get why I think Elvis sounded like him, and then could look at things and say, he learned how to play Elvis Presley, so maybe I have a chance of doing that too. So when you're playing these different guys, you know, you find the voice that goes with the look, that goes with the movement. You know, if you're playing Bull McCaffrey in Backdraft, it's not, you know, you're from Chicago. You know, you're a bit of a wise guy. And you know, all characters have their own life, they have their own demeanor. You got to find it. And again, you know, one of my favorite ever was this guy.
Yeah. And don't wear tights, right? That's the other.
Yeah, that was a rough go on. I let myself get bought out. Lady Hawk was the name of that picture.
Rucker Hauer rolled.
And Rucker Hauer, well, I came into it because I said to the director at the time, and everything about it, I felt bad. I was wrong. I'd accepted this role that I had no business being in. And for a number of reasons, half of it was my fault and half of it was other people's fault. But I must say, yeah, I just met Goldie, and just met Goldie, and she said, "You're not going to be back in 3 months. You'll be back in 7 months because it takes forever to shoot stuff over in Italy." And I thought, no, it'll be all right. And I went over there, and for the first 6 days that I was there, 6 out of 7 days there were strikes. And I said, "She's right, man. I'm going to be out here for 7 months. This is not good." And then things started going sideways, and finally the wardrobe came out, and I said, "Man, this is just all wrong." I looked at myself in the mirror, and I finally just started to laugh, and I said, "That's it." And I went and begged the director who was here a couple nights ago, Dick Donner. I said, "Dick, I got to get out of here. It's my fault." I should have never said yes. He said, "No, you'll be fine." I said, "No." And finally, after about half an hour, I said, "Look, you want Rutger Hauer, and I can get it for you." And I don't know, you heard that going in my mind now. I didn't know Rutger Hauer. I knew him from, I'd seen him in probably Blade Runner, and I thought, that's really what this thing needs. And I noticed there was this little beep, and then Dick said, "You think?" And thanks to Goldie and a woman named Anthea Silver, 24 hours later, Rutger Hauer was in the studios at the Cinecittà in Rome, and I was back in a hotel room with Goldie Hawn. I'll take it.
There's no way I'm going to ask you a question after that. Okay, so we want to take a couple from the audience, right?
Yeah, that's always fun. Hopefully I can help you out.
How about this fellow right here?
I haven't been able to figure. I don't care. I think that they have a much harder time casting the John Carpenter role. I think that's going to be a little tougher than casting somebody for me. That's where I find the problem. I believe that remakes can be made, but I think they should be made with pictures that are extremely flawed. Maybe it was a really good idea, or it was miscast, or it had everything going for it, and then it came out at the wrong time, and then you find that, oh, it could have been better in today's world. There can be reasons to make remakes, but when they're kind of unique on their own, and they carry with them a sense of originality and authenticity, I think then that we all smell a sort of money approach to something and saying there's money to be made here. And we all get our back up on that. I think that's just a natural reaction that we have. But I don't think there's anything wrong with making remakes. When John and I made The Thing, John was very excited about telling me about The Thing, which I'd never seen as a movie. And then when I did see it, I thought, it's not my cup of tea, but maybe John's got something up his sleeve. And he said, "Well, I'm not doing that." So he said, "Look, that actually came from a short story called Who Goes There?" He said, "I want to do Who Goes There." And I said, "What's Who Goes There about?" He said, "Paranoia." And he said, "It's paranoia." He said, "Now, the monster's going to be a badass." It's really going to be bad. But the movie's about paranoia. And I said, "Oh, that sounds great." And then we started talking about it. I think that's a good reason to do a remake. And I'm glad that we did. I think we made, last week it was one of the 12 classics they had at AFI, and I had the pleasure of introducing it there. I think John, once again, I think that's my favorite John Carpenter movie. I think that he was just perfect.
Right there.
There's technically another way to play Snake again. You know the Metal Gear Solid Huh.
Snake is now 110 years old. Well, I have to, look, it's like anything else. You have to read it and see why it's a great idea and see why it makes sense. I always saw, but Charlie Bronson was originally, who they wanted for Snake, and like I said earlier, John fought for me. I was 28 or 9 years old at the time. I think that Snake Plissken, and this is why I wanted to do it quickly when we decided to do Escape from LA. I think that Snake Plissken's a young man. I think young enough to do the things that he does easily. You got to remember something about Snake too that I think people often tend to forget, and it can be bettered in some aspects with an older man, but I think it's way better as a younger man. Snake's an escape artist. He can get out of anything, and sometimes he gets out of brute strength and stamina, and that ain't happening as much anymore. But if people come up with ideas that make it work, we always want the only other one we wanted to do was which I thought was really good. Both John and I thought that Escape from Earth for Snake. And the last shot would just be out there floating around in that tin can, Major Tom, wondering what was that guy's problem? Well, Major Tom was so lonely out there, and Snake was like, finally, it's time to, get away from these people.
Who's got a really good one? Who feels strong? Who feels strong?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Russell.
Hi.
I want to thank you and John for all those great audio considerations we observed.
Those are fun days.
I think that your wife was cheap by not getting you certain characters' name or Reed or Sir Donald Plessken, God rest him, was in the novel at least. Yes, there is an Escape from New York novel. I have it. It's I understand that you did all your own singing in that movie, and how many times do you
Nope. Yeah, no, I'm not your man. That might be right there with Lady Hawk for me. There's a piece of footage somewhere that I think maybe John has, I don't know. When you're doing a thing like that, what I was shocked to find out about a week before we started, because I'd been practicing. We only had 33 days to shoot. John was, he was the only guy that I probably could have done that with. Larry Franco, producer here, was my brother-in-law. I got Larry to do that movie. He was just coming off of Apocalypse Now. And he met John, and John liked him. But I needed Larry to schedule this thing so that I could do it, because I was still learning the songs. Unfortunately for me, I was learning them to the Elvis Presley versions, unaware that about a week before we started, I got what I was going to actually loop to, which was a guy named Ronnie McDowell, thank you. Ronnie McDowell, who was really good, but slightly different. And now I knew that if, in my mind, because I'd been working on it, it was real different in my mind. I knew it wasn't to the untrained ear, but now mine was trained. And I had to sell Elvis a little more in song than I wanted to, because I had to overcome a slight sound change that you would hear. Now here's the good part about this. There's some film somewhere. I had to use a different voice when I sang to look like I wanted to look. And they made my mic was always dead. And so one day they turned it on. And I've been told that was in dailies the next day. They had me singing in this other crazy voice. Like, it's supposed to be, John said it's one of the funniest things.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
It's completely insane, but it's not a voice that sounds anything at all. I'm not trying to do Elvis. It's like I had to do a different thing, facially do what I wanted to do. So I've never seen it, but I've been told it's.
Get John Carpenter on the phone right now.
You would. Deborah was great. She was an ex-girlfriend of John's, and she was a script gal. Heart was always in it, and she was great. And she was very fortunate, I think, to have the advantage of working with Larry Franco as well. They were both together excellent, and they both always had John's back. Larry and John did 10 movies together. I don't know how many Deborah and John did, but a lot. And it was sad. We were buds. We were all friends, you know, and we'd shoot sometimes and finish and go out and drink and have a good time. And about 10 years ago, I met a gentleman tonight who is did some comic book stuff on Snake Plissken, and I met him 10 years ago at Deborah's house. And that was the last time I saw Deborah, because John and I came out of there, and I said, John, what's the deal with Deborah? She doesn't look right. And he said, what do you think? And I said, no, she looks like she's got cancer. And she died, I don't know, about 8 months later. And she was a great, great gal. Very, very well respected in Hollywood, amongst the women in Hollywood, certainly. And a bit of a pioneer and all that. Great gal. Oh, go ahead. You stood up in front of the first one they had. And one thing about you, you're smart.
I was going to say a tattoo. I don't know.
That's a great idea. You know what? The first movie, I don't keep things from the movies that I do. And once in a while I keep a little something. I kept everything of Snakes from the first movie, because I thought we would do another one. And in the second movie, I wore it in the beginning. And that's the original outfit. And 17 years later, I was pretty proud of that, you know. But we had a hard time, actually, because of the outfit. It was so good, it became iconic itself. And we had to, John and I, think about what I was going to wear in the second one, and we said, if you wear the same outfit, then you're a cartoon character. You're Dennis the Menace. You never change. And it was a hard decision to say, you know, we're not going to do that. We're going to move on into, you know, they're going to be two different. They're going to do two different time periods. And I have my kids have friends that were real Escape from New York fans, and I gave the boots to one of them, and I gave a shirt to one, but I kept the jacket. We had a lot of eye patches. We had 7 or 8 different eye patches.
You ever put it on the wrong guy?
No, I mean, never. I put it on my left eye because it was my bad eye. But if you're riding a motorcycle at night with lights on you, and you're only with one eye and you're dodging around people, and that's not an easy thing to do. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. You guys, go ahead. Throw them out. I'll make quick answers.
Well, I've got a TV question. I remember your own shows, but I also remember seeing you on both Gilligan's Island, where they wouldn't let you talk. You were throwing coconuts at everybody.
They were smart.
Where you bought a mail-order rifle to try to capture the fugitive. Do you have any stories about?
Sounds like a teacher.
I don't. I'm gonna roll past that one. I did get to do 2 or 3 fugitives, and I think I did 2 of them. 2 of them I got to work with my dad on. He wasn't on the show. It just happened to be that we got cast on the same show, and that was my most fun thing about The Fugitive. Yeah.
I.J. McCready, Snake Plissken, Jack Burton. They end up in a bar fight together. Who
Always
wins?
take Snake, end of story.
All right, guys, this is really special. You don't do a lot of these. We know that.
I don't do any of them.
You did this one, ladies and gentlemen. Kurt Russell.